The poker game in the back room of Sullivan's saloon had been going on for 7 hours straight, and Olivia Warren could feel the weight of every minute pressing down on her shoulders as she stood in the corner, watching her uncle throw away everything they had left. It was August 1883 in Oatman, Arizona, and the desert heat outside was nothing compared to the suffocating tension that filled the smoke-filled room, where 5 men sat around a table covered in cards, chips, and broken dreams. Her uncle Marcus had raised her since she was 8 years old, after a cholera outbreak took both her parents in the span of 3 days. For 12 years he had been the only family she had, and despite his fondness for whiskey and cards, he had always managed to keep a roof over their heads and food on their table. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, he had that desperate gleam in his eyes that told her he was chasing a loss, throwing good money after bad, and she had watched their small savings disappear chip by chip into the center of that table. The other players were a mix of local ranchers and drifters, men she recognized from around town. But there was one man at that table who commanded attention like a force of nature. Yates Younger sat across from her uncle, his broad shoulders filling out a worn leather vest, his sun-bronzed forearms resting on the table as he studied his cards with an intensity that made her breath catch. He had arrived in Oatman 3 weeks ago, coming down from the mountains with a string of beaver pelts and enough gold dust to make the local merchants take notice. Everything about him spoke of raw power barely contained, from the corded muscles of his neck to the way his large hands dwarfed the playing cards he held. His dark hair hung past his shoulders, tied back with a strip of leather, and a thick beard covered his jaw. But it was his eyes that held her attention. They were the color of storm clouds, sharp and assessing, missing nothing. She had seen him around town. Impossible not to notice a man of his size and presence, but they had never spoken. Mountain men rarely stayed long in Oatman, using it as a place to trade their furs and stock up on supplies before heading back to their solitary lives in the high country. But Yates Younger seemed to be lingering, and more than one unmarried woman in town had noticed. "I am calling," her uncle said, his words slightly slurred as he pushed the last of his chips into the pot. "And I am raising." Olivia's stomach dropped. There were no more chips in front of him. What could he possibly be raising with? Marcus Warren fumbled in his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Olivia recognized it immediately. It was the deed to their small house on the edge of town, the only real property they owned. Her hands went cold despite the summer heat. "The house," Marcus said, tossing the deed onto the table. "Worth at least $500. That is my raise." A murmur went through the other players. 2 of them immediately folded, wanting no part of a game that had escalated beyond their comfort. That left only Marcus Yates and a ranch hand named Cooper, who worked for one of the big cattle operations north of town. Cooper studied his cards for a long moment before shaking his head and folding. "Too rich for my blood." That left just Marcus and Yates, and Olivia found herself holding her breath as the mountain man considered his cards. The silence stretched out until she thought she might scream, and then Yates looked up, his gray eyes finding hers across the room before shifting to her uncle. "That house is where you live with your niece," Yates said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. "You are betting her home. She is 20 years old enough to make her own way," Marcus said, and Olivia felt the words like a slap. "Besides, I have got it straight. There is no way you are beating this hand." Yates was quiet for another long moment. Then he reached into his own pocket and pulled out a leather pouch heavy with gold dust. "I reckon that is worth about $300, he said, setting it on the table. "But it is not enough to match your raise, so I will add something else." He paused, and Olivia could see him weighing his words carefully. "If I win, I do not want the house. I want your niece, her hand in marriage." The room exploded in shocked exclamations, and Olivia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. This could not be happening. Her uncle could not actually be wagering her like she was property, and this stranger could not actually be asking for her as a prize in a poker game. "You cannot do that," she said, finding her voice and stepping forward from the corner. "I am not a piece of property to be gambled away." Marcus did not even look at her. His eyes were fixed on the pot in the center of the table, on the gold dust and chips and the deed to their house. "You are my ward until you marry," he said, "and I have the legal right to arrange your marriage as I see fit. If this man wants to offer marriage as part of his wager, that is his choice to make. And if I refuse?" Olivia demanded, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. For the first time, Yates looked directly at her, and there was something in his expression that was not cruelty or lust, but rather a kind of calculation, as if he was solving a problem. "If I win, the choice will be yours," he said quietly. "I will win the right to ask for your hand, but you will have the freedom to say yes or no. No one is going to force you into anything. That was not the wager, Marcus protested. If you win, you get her hand in marriage, not just the chance to ask. Yates never took his eyes off Olivia. Those are my terms. If you do not like them, I will fold right now and you can keep your house. But if you agree and I win, your niece gets to make her own choice. That is the only way I play this hand. Marcus hesitated, greed warring with suspicion on his flushed face. Finally he nodded. Fine, but when you win, you are going to convince her to say yes, because I am not taking her back if she refuses you. She will be on her own. The casual cruelty of those words hit Olivia like a physical blow. In one sentence, her uncle had made it clear just how little she meant to him, how easily he could cast her aside. 12 years of keeping his house, cooking his meals, mending his clothes, and this was how he repaid her. Are we agreed then? Yates asked, his voice steady. Agreed, Marcus said quickly. Now show your cards so I can collect this pot. Yates laid down his cards one by one. King of spades, king of hearts, king of diamonds, 10 of clubs, 10 of spades. A full house, kings over tens. The color drained from Marcus's face as he stared at the cards. His hands shook as he laid down his own hand. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of mixed suits. A straight, just as he had claimed. A good hand in any normal game, but not good enough to beat a full house. No, Marcus whispered. No, that is not possible. I had it. I had the winning hand. You had a good hand, Yates said, pulling the pot toward him with one large hand, but not good enough. The house deed and the right to ask your niece for her hand are mine. Marcus lurched to his feet, his chair crashing backward. You cheated. You must have cheated. There is no other explanation. Yates remained seated, but there was a dangerous stillness about him now, like a cougar about to spring. I did not cheat. Every man at this table was watching. You made a bet you could not afford to lose and you lost. Now sit down and accept it like a man. For a moment, Olivia thought her uncle might actually throw a punch, but Cooper and one of the other players grabbed his arms, holding him back. Let it go, Marcus, Cooper said. You lost fair and square. We all saw it. Marcus shook them off, his face twisted with anger and shame. He looked at Olivia and there was no apology in his eyes, no regret for what he had done. You are on your own now, he said. I wash my hands of you. Then he turned and staggered out of the room, leaving Olivia standing alone with a group of strangers, and the mountain man who had just won the right to ask for her hand in marriage. The other players quickly gathered their remaining chips and made their excuses, clearly wanting no part of the drama that was unfolding. Within minutes, the back room was empty except for Olivia and Yates. He remained seated at the table, methodically stacking his winnings, and she stood frozen in place, trying to process what had just happened. Finally, Yates looked up at her. You should probably sit down, he said. You look like you are about to fall over. She wanted to refuse, to maintain some dignity, but her legs were shaking so badly that she thought he might be right. She pulled out the chair that Cooper had vacated and sat down, keeping the width of the table between them. This is insane, she said. You cannot actually expect me to marry you, just because you won a poker game. I do not expect anything, Yates said. I told your uncle the terms. If you say no, then you say no. But I figured it was better than letting him bet your home and leave you with nothing. Olivia studied him, trying to understand. Why would you do that? Why would you bet on a hand that could have cost you $300 in gold just to help someone you do not even know? Yates was quiet for a moment, his large hands still moving the chips into neat stacks. I have been watching your uncle all night, he finally said. He is a losing player. Chases every pot, cannot fold when he should, drinks too much to think straight. I knew he was going to lose everything, and I knew eventually he was going to try to bet something he should not. When I saw you standing in that corner, I figured I would rather be the one to win that hand than some of these other men. At least, I am giving you a choice. But marriage, Olivia said. Why would you offer that? You could have just asked for the house deed and nothing else. Something flickered in Yates's gray eyes, an emotion she could not quite read. I have been living in the mountains for 8 years, he said. Ever since I was 22, it is a good life in a lot of ways. Peaceful, free, but it is also lonely. I come down to towns like this a few times a year and I see families, couples, and I think maybe it is time I had something more than just solitude and beaver traps. When I saw you tonight, I saw a woman who was smart enough to know what her uncle was doing, brave enough to speak up about it, and strong enough to be standing on her own 2 feet even after her world just collapsed. Those are not qualities you find every day. Olivia did not know what to say to that. It was probably the strangest proposal she could have imagined, and yet there was an honesty to it that was almost disarming. You do not know anything about me, she finally said. That is true, Yates agreed, just like you do not know anything about me. But I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am asking if you would be willing to get to know me, to see if maybe we could build something together. If you decide you do not want that, I will give you the deed to your house and enough money to get by on until you figure out what you want to do. I am not going to leave you destitute." "Why would you do that?" Olivia asked, genuinely confused. "If I say no, you get nothing. You would be out $300 in gold and have nothing to show for it." Yates shrugged his massive shoulders. "I have more gold where that came from. And I would rather lose the money than force a woman into something she does not want. That is not the kind of man I am." Olivia sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Her entire life had just been upended in the span of an hour. Her uncle had abandoned her, she was probably about to lose the only home she had known for 12 years, and a mountain man she had never spoken to before tonight was offering her a choice between marriage and charity. It was too much to process. "I need time to think," she said. "This is all happening too fast." "Fair enough," Yates said. He reached into the pot and pulled out the deed to her house, sliding it across the table to her. "Here, your house. No matter what you decide about me, it is yours. I am signing it over to you tomorrow morning." Olivia stared at the deed, not reaching for it. "What about my uncle?" "It was his house. He bet it and lost it," Yates said flatly. "And then he said he was washing his hands of you. As far as I was concerned, he gave up any rights he had. The house is yours now." Slowly, Olivia reached out and picked up the deed, holding the thick paper in her hands. It represented security, a roof over her head, a place to live even if everything else fell apart. And Yates was just giving it to her, no strings attached. "I do not understand you," she said quietly. "You do not have to," Yates replied. "Not yet, anyway, but I am hoping you will give me a chance to change that. I am staying at the boarding house on 3rd Street, room 7. You know where to find me when you have made your decision." He stood up, gathering his gold and chips, and Olivia was struck again by the sheer size of him. He had to be at least 6 feet 4 inches tall, with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway. But despite his size, there was a gentleness to the way he moved, a careful control that suggested he was very aware of his own strength. "Get home safe," he said. "The streets are not always friendly this time of night." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone in the empty back room with a deed to a house and more questions than answers. She made her way home in a daze, barely noticing the late-night sounds of Oatman around her. The small house on the edge of town was dark when she arrived, and she fumbled with the key before getting the door open. Inside, everything was exactly as she had left it that morning, before her uncle had dragged her to the saloon to watch him play cards. It seemed impossible that so much could have changed in just a few hours. She lit a lamp and sat down at the kitchen table, spreading the deed out in front of her. Yates Younger had won this in a poker game, and he was just giving it to her. No demands, no expectations, just a simple gift and an offer to get to know each other better. It was the strangest thing that had ever happened to her. But what were her alternatives? She could refuse his offer, keep the house, and try to make a life for herself here in Oatman. She had been working as a seamstress for the past few years, taking in mending and alterations to earn a bit of money. Maybe she could build on that, establish herself as a businesswoman. It would be hard, and there would be talk. A young unmarried woman living alone was bound to attract gossip and unwanted attention. But it was possible, or she could accept Yates's offer. Get to know him, see if there was something real between them. He was offering her a chance at a different kind of life, one she had never really considered before. Marriage to a mountain man would mean leaving Oatman, leaving behind everything she knew. It would mean living in the wilderness, far from civilization. But it would also mean adventure, freedom, and if Yates was even half as honorable as he seemed tonight, it might mean partnership and respect. Olivia realized she was getting ahead of herself. Yates had not asked her to marry him right now. He had asked for a chance to get to know her. That was all. She could agree to that without committing to anything more. The question was, did she want to? She thought about the way he had looked at her across that poker table, the steadiness in his gray eyes. She thought about how he had changed the terms of the bet to give her a choice when he could have demanded anything. She thought about the careful way he moved despite his size, and the quiet confidence in his voice. And she thought about her uncle walking out that door without a backward glance, after 12 years of her taking care of him. Maybe it was time to take a chance on someone new. Olivia slept poorly that night, her dreams filled with cards and mountains and gray eyes. She woke early, as the sun was just beginning to paint the sky pink and gold, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She had made her decision sometime in the night, though she could not pinpoint the exact moment. She was going to give Yates Younger a chance. After washing and dressing in her best calico dress, a soft blue that brought out the color of her eyes, she made her way toward the boarding house on 3rd Street. Oatman was just beginning to wake up, shopkeepers opening their doors, the smell of fresh bread drifting from the bakery. She nodded to a few people she knew, acutely aware of the curious looks she was getting. Word of last night's poker game had probably already spread through town. In a place as small as Oatman, secrets did not stay secret for long. The boarding house was a neat two-story building run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. Olivia had been there a few times to deliver mending, and Mrs. Patterson greeted her with raised eyebrows when she knocked on the door. "Olivia Warren," the older woman said. "I heard about what happened last night. Are you all right, dear?" "I am fine, Mrs. Patterson," Olivia said, mustering a smile. "I am here to see Mr. Younger. Is he in?" Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows climbed even higher. "Room 7, second door on the left upstairs." "But Olivia, are you sure about this? That man is a stranger, and what your uncle did was shameful. You do not owe anyone anything, I know," Olivia said gently. "But I would still like to speak with him if that is all right." Mrs. Patterson hesitated, then nodded. "Go on up. But my door is open if you need anything." Olivia climbed the narrow stairs and found room 7 easily enough. She raised her hand to knock, then paused, her heart suddenly pounding. This was it. Once she knocked on that door, she would be committing to something, even if she did not know exactly what yet. Before she could talk herself out of it, she knocked 3 times, firm and clear. The door opened almost immediately, and Yates stood there, and somehow he seemed even larger in the confines of the hallway. He was dressed in clean clothes, his hair still damp as if he had just washed it, and his beard was neatly trimmed. He looked surprised to see her. "Miss Warren," he said, "I did not expect you so soon." "May I come in?" Olivia asked. "We should talk." Yates stepped back, holding the door open. "Of course." The room was small but clean, with a bed, a dresser, and a single chair by the window. Yates gestured to the chair, and Olivia sat down while he leaned against the dresser, his arms crossed over his broad chest. "I have made my decision," Olivia said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "Or at least, part of a decision. I am willing to get to know you better, to see if there is something real between us. But I need to be honest with you. I am not sure what I am doing or what I want. My whole life just fell apart last night, and I am still trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together." Something that might have been relief crossed Yates's face. "That is all I am asking for," he said. "A chance. We can take this as slow as you need." "What does that mean?" "Exactly," Olivia asked. "How do we get to know each other? Do you just stay in Oatman for a while? Do I come with you to the mountains? I do not even know what you are suggesting." Yates was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I was planning to stay in Oatman for another week or so," he finally said. "Finish up my trading, stock up on supplies. What if we spend that time together? I can show you around the area, we can talk, and you can decide if you think this could work. If at the end of the week you want nothing to do with me, I will respect that and ride out. But if you think maybe there is something here worth exploring, then we can talk about next steps." "And if I do want to explore it," Olivia asked, "what would that look like?" "I would probably ask you to marry me," Yates said bluntly. "But not right away. Maybe we could have a longer courtship, exchange letters while I am in the mountains and you are here. Or if you were willing, you could come with me for a visit, see what the mountain life is like before you commit to anything permanent. I know it is not an easy life, and it is not for everyone. I would not want you to agree to marry me and then find out you hate everything about where and how I live." Olivia appreciated his honesty. "That seems reasonable," she said slowly. "All right, let us start with this week. We will spend time together, and I will see how I feel at the end of it." "Fair enough," Yates said. He pushed off from the dresser and extended his hand. "Partners?" Olivia looked at his hand, so much larger than hers, calloused and scarred from years of hard work. Then she reached out and shook it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. "Partners," she agreed. Over the next week, Olivia discovered that Yates Younger was not at all what she had expected. She had assumed that a mountain man would be rough, uneducated, maybe even crude. But Yates was thoughtful and surprisingly well-spoken. He had been raised on a farm in Missouri, the youngest of 5 brothers, and had learned to read from his mother, who had been a schoolteacher before she married. He talked about his family with obvious affection, though there was a sadness in his eyes when he mentioned that both his parents had passed away while he was in the mountains. He had gone west at 22, looking for adventure and freedom, and had fallen in love with the high country. He trapped beaver and hunted elk, spending months at a time alone in the wilderness. But he also talked about the beauty of that life, the way the sun looked rising over snow-capped peaks, the sound of a mountain stream, the fierce satisfaction of living by his own hands and wits. They went riding together one afternoon, Yates on a massive gray gelding that was the only horse in Oatman big enough to carry him, and Olivia on a smaller mare she rented from the livery. They rode out into the desert, away from town, and Yates showed her how to spot the signs of wildlife, how to read the land. He was patient when she asked questions, never making her feel foolish for not knowing something. They had dinner together at the hotel restaurant, and Olivia was aware of the stares they were getting, the whispers behind hands. Everyone in Oatman knew what had happened at the poker game, and everyone had an opinion about what Olivia should do. But sitting across from Yates, watching the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, listening to his deep voice rumble through a story about a close call with a grizzly bear, she found she did not care what anyone else thought. On the fourth day, they went for a walk in the evening, when the worst of the heat had faded. They ended up sitting on a bench outside the general store, watching the sunset behind the distant mountains. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia said, gathering her courage. "Of course," Yates replied. "Why have you never married before? You are 30 years old. Surely there have been opportunities." Yates was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the sunset. "There have been a few women over the years," he finally said, "but I have always been honest about what my life is like. I am gone for months at a time, living in places most people would consider the middle of nowhere. I do not have a fancy house or a steady income. Some women found that romantic for about 5 minutes, and then they realized what it would actually mean, and they lost interest. A few were willing, but I was not sure if they actually wanted me or just the idea of me. I did not want to marry someone who was going to wake up a year later and realize she had made a terrible mistake." "That makes sense," Olivia said. "But what makes you think I am different? What if I am just another woman who finds the idea of you romantic but cannot handle the reality?" Yates turned to look at her, and there was something intense in his gaze. "Because you are not some starry-eyed girl looking for adventure. You have been taking care of yourself and your uncle for years. You know how to work hard, you know how to make do with less, and when your whole world fell apart, you did not fall apart with it. You stood up and made a choice. That tells me you have strength I can depend on." Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "You do not really know me that well," she said. "We have only been spending time together for a few days." "That is true," Yates agreed. "But I am a good judge of character. I have to be, living the way I do. Out in the mountains, one bad decision about who to trust can get you killed, and everything I have seen from you tells me you are someone worth trusting." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to purple. Olivia found herself acutely aware of Yates sitting next to her, the sheer solid presence of him. She had never been particularly interested in men before. There had been a few boys who had tried to court her over the years, but between taking care of her uncle and building her sewing business, she had not had much time for romance. But there was something about Yates that drew her in, a combination of strength and gentleness that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her parents died. "What are you thinking?" Yates asked quietly. Olivia hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I am thinking that I like you," she said, "more than I expected to, and that scares me a little bit." "Why does it scare you?" "Because liking you means trusting you, and trusting people has not worked out so well for me lately." Yates nodded slowly. "Your uncle was a fool to do what he did, but I promise you I am not him. If you put your trust in me, I will do everything in my power to be worthy of it." Olivia believed him. That was the scary part. After everything that had happened, she should be more cautious, more guarded. But when Yates Younger looked at her with those steady gray eyes and made her a promise, she believed him. "Ask me again," she said impulsively. Yates blinked. "Ask you what?" "What you wanted to ask in the back room of that saloon. Ask me properly." Understanding dawned in Yates's eyes, and he shifted on the bench to face her fully. "Olivia Warren," he said, his deep voice soft but clear, "would you do me the honor of allowing me to court you properly, with the intention of marriage if we find that we suit each other?" "Yes," Olivia said, feeling a smile spread across her face. "Yes, I would like that very much." Something lit up in Yates's expression, a warmth that transformed his whole face. "Well then," he said, "I suppose that makes this official." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, and took her hand in his. His palm was rough and warm, and his fingers engulfed hers completely, but his touch was gentle, almost reverent. "I am going to do right by you," he said. "I promise you that." "I believe you," Olivia replied, and she was surprised to find that she meant it completely. The next 3 days passed in a blur of happiness that Olivia had not expected. Yates was attentive without being overbearing, showing her through both words and actions that he valued her opinions and respected her boundaries. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's histories, sharing their hopes and fears. Olivia told him about her parents, about the terror of watching them succumb to cholera, about the loneliness of being raised by an uncle who saw her more as a housekeeper than a niece. She told him about her dreams of having a family of her own someday, a real family built on love and mutual respect. Yates told her about the mountains, about the harsh beauty of winter in the high country, about the satisfaction of living off the land. But he was also honest about the challenges. It was dangerous work and lonely. He had seen men go mad from the isolation, had narrowly avoided death more times than he could count. But he also talked about the freedom of it, the peace of being alone with nature. "Would you ever consider leaving it?" Olivia asked one evening as they sat on her front porch. "The mountain life, I mean. Could you be happy living in a town?" Yates thought about it for a long moment. "I do not know," he finally admitted. "Part of me thinks I could, if I had the right reason. If I had someone to build a life with, maybe I would not need the mountains the way I do now. But I am not sure I could be happy living somewhere like Oatman long term. Too many people, too much noise. I would feel caged." "But you would not expect me to live in complete isolation, would you?" Olivia pressed. "I need people too. I need conversation and community." "I know," Yates said, "and I have been thinking about that. What if we found a middle ground? There are small settlements up in the high country, just a handful of families. They are not as isolated as my trapping cabin, but they are not as crowded as Oatman either. We could build a place there, somewhere I could still hunt and trap, but where you would have neighbors close enough to visit. Would that work for you?" Olivia considered it. It was more than she had expected him to offer, a genuine compromise. "I think I would need to see it first," she said, "before I agreed to anything permanent. I want to know what I am getting into." "That is fair," Yates agreed. "The week is almost up. I need to head back to the mountains soon to check my trap lines and prepare for winter. What if you came with me? Just for a couple of weeks. You can see where I live, meet some of the folks in the settlements, and get a real sense of what the life would be like. If you hate it, I will bring you back here and we can figure out something else. But if you think you could be happy there, then we can talk about making it permanent." It was a big decision. Going into the mountains with Yates would be a statement, one that the whole town would notice and gossip about. But Olivia found that she did not care about the gossip anymore. She cared about making the right choice for herself, about building a life that made her happy. "All right," she said, "I will come with you, but I need a few days to prepare, to settle my affairs here and make sure everything is in order." "Take all the time you need," Yates said. "I am not going anywhere without you." The next 2 days were a whirlwind of activity. Olivia made arrangements with her seamstress clients, letting them know she would be gone for a few weeks, but would return to complete any outstanding work. She packed carefully, trying to anticipate what she might need for a trip into the mountains. Yates helped, offering advice on what would be practical and what would just weigh her down. She also had to face the inevitable confrontation with her uncle. Marcus had been making himself scarce since the poker game, but Olivia tracked him down at his new lodgings, a rundown room above the saddle shop. He looked terrible, unshaven and bleary-eyed, and the smell of whiskey hung heavy in the air. "What do you want?" he asked when he opened the door. "I wanted you to know I am leaving Oatman for a while," Olivia said, keeping her voice steady. "I am going with Yates Younger up into the mountains," Marcus snorted. "So you are going to marry that savage after all. I figured you would. You always were too soft for your own good." "He is not a savage," Olivia said sharply. "He is a good man, which is more than I can say for you. You bet away my home and told me you were washing your hands of me. Yates gave me back that home and offered me a choice. Can you not see the difference?" "He won you in a poker game," Marcus said. "That does not make him a saint." "He won the right to ask," Olivia corrected. "And he gave me the power to say no. You were the one who was willing to sell me like property, so do not you dare judge him or me." Marcus looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "You are making a mistake," he muttered. "Maybe," Olivia said, "but it is my mistake to make. I just wanted you to know where I was going. Despite everything, you are still my uncle, and I do not want you to worry." "I am not going to worry," Marcus said. "You are on your own now. You made your choice." Olivia felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant, almost detached. She had spent years caring for this man, and in the end he had thrown her away without a second thought. She was done grieving for a relationship that had only ever existed in her imagination. "Goodbye, Uncle Marcus," she said quietly, and walked away without looking back. The morning of their departure dawned clear and hot, the Arizona sun already beating down even though it was barely past dawn. Yates arrived at her house leading 2 horses, his gray gelding and a pretty bay mare. "I bought her for you," he said, nodding to the mare. "If you are going to be traveling with me, you need your own horse. Her name is Copper, and she has got a good temperament, easy gait, smart, and sure-footed in the mountains." Olivia ran her hand along the mare's neck, touched by the gesture. "Thank you," she said. "She is beautiful." "So are you," Yates said, and there was no flirtation in his voice, just simple honesty. "Are you ready for this?" Olivia looked at her house, at the town of Oatman spreading out around her, at everything she had ever known. Then she looked at Yates, solid and steady, waiting patiently for her answer. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." They rode out of Oatman, just as the town was waking up, and Olivia did not look back. The journey into the mountains took 3 days of hard riding. They traveled northeast, leaving the desert heat behind and climbing into cooler elevations. The landscape changed gradually from sandy scrub to pinyon pine, and then to tall ponderosas and aspens. The air grew thinner and sweeter, and Olivia found herself falling in love with the wild beauty of it all. Yates was a good traveling companion, attentive to her comfort but not fussing over her. He showed her how to make camp properly, how to build a fire that would not smoke too much, how to string up their food supplies so the bears could not get to them. At night they slept on opposite sides of the fire, Yates always positioning himself between her and the dark forest. A silent guardian. On the second night, as they sat around the campfire eating rabbit that Yates had shot and roasted, Olivia asked the question that had been nagging at her. "When you made that bet at the poker table," she said, "did you know you were going to win?" Yates looked up from his food, his gray eyes reflecting the firelight. "I had a good hand," he said, "but you never know for certain in poker. Your uncle could have had better. I was taking a chance." "But why?" Olivia pressed. "Why take that chance for me?" Yates set down his plate and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You really want to know?" "Yes. I saw you the first day I arrived in Oatman," he said quietly. "You were coming out of the general store carrying a load of fabric. You smiled at the shopkeeper and thanked her, and then you helped an old woman carry her groceries to her wagon. It was a small thing, but it struck me. You were kind, really kind, not just doing it for show. Over the next few weeks I kept noticing you around town. You always had a smile for people, always seemed to be helping someone. And I thought to myself, that is the kind of woman I could build a life with." He paused, looking almost embarrassed. "I know that sounds strange. I did not even know your name yet. But I asked around and found out you were Marcus Warren's niece, that you had been taking care of him for years even though he was not always good to you. And I thought, here is a woman who knows how to be loyal, how to work hard, how to keep going even when things are tough. Those are the qualities that matter in a life, especially in the life I live." Olivia felt her breath catch. "So you planned this? The poker game?" "No," Yates said quickly. "I did not plan for your uncle to be such a fool. But when I saw what was happening, when I realized he was about to bet away your home and maybe worse, I made a choice. I figured if I won, at least I could make sure you had options. And if I lost, well, I lost. But I was not going to sit there and watch some other man win you without even trying. You could have just given me the money to buy back the house from whoever won it," Olivia pointed out. "I could have," Yates agreed. "But that would not have given me an excuse to get to know you. I told you I am 30 years old and I am tired of being alone. When I saw a chance to meet you properly, to have a reason to ask for your time, I took it. Maybe that makes me selfish, but I do not regret it." Olivia did not know what to say. It was possibly the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her, and yet it was also completely practical and honest. That was Yates in a nutshell. She was learning. Romantic and practical all at once. "I am glad you took the chance," she finally said softly. Yates's face broke into a wide smile and he reached across the fire to take her hand. "So am I." They reached Yates's cabin on the afternoon of the third day. It was nestled in a valley between 2 peaks, surrounded by towering pines and with a small stream running nearby. The cabin itself was larger than Olivia had expected, well built from logs with a stone chimney and real glass windows. Inside it was neat and clean, with a large fireplace, a bed in one corner, a table and chairs, and shelves lined with supplies and books. "You have books," Olivia said in surprise, running her fingers along the spines. She recognized a few titles, classics she had read herself. "I told you my mother was a school teacher," Yates said. "She made sure all her boys could read. I bring a few new books with me every time I come down from the mountains. Helps pass the long winter nights." Olivia turned to face him. "I could be happy here," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "It is beautiful and peaceful and you have built a real home. But you are right that I would need some kind of community. I cannot be completely isolated." "The Calloway family lives about 3 miles west," Yates said. "They have got 4 kids and another on the way. Nice folks, and there are 2 more families within a day's ride. We get together once a month or so, sometimes more often in the summer. It is not Oatman, but you would have neighbors." "Can we visit them?" Olivia asked. "I would like to meet them." "Of course," Yates said. "We can ride over tomorrow if you are not too tired from the journey." That night, Yates set up a makeshift curtain to give Olivia privacy in the cabin. He insisted she take the bed while he slept on the floor, and no amount of protesting could change his mind. Olivia lay in his bed, surrounded by the scent of pine and leather and something that was uniquely Yates, and felt more at peace than she had in years. The next morning, they rode over to the Calloway place. It was a larger cabin than Yates's, with several outbuildings and a good-sized garden. Emma Calloway, a plump woman in her 30s, greeted them warmly, and her husband Thomas shook Yates's hand with obvious respect. "So this is the woman you told us about," Emma said, looking Olivia up and down with a frank assessment that was not unkind. "You are even prettier than Yates said." Olivia felt herself blush. "He talked about me? Last time he was through here about 2 weeks ago," Emma said. Said he met a woman in Oatman who had him thinking about settling down properly. Thomas and I about fell over. Yates has been coming through these parts for years, and we have never heard him talk about a woman before. They spent the afternoon with the Calloways, and Olivia found herself genuinely enjoying their company. Emma was funny and down to earth, full of stories about life in the mountains. The children were polite but curious, peppering Olivia with questions about town life. Thomas and Yates talked about hunting and trapping, and Olivia could see the respect between the two men. As they were preparing to leave, Emma pulled Olivia aside. "Can I give you some advice?" she asked. "Of course," Olivia said. "Life up here is not easy," Emma said. "The winters are hard, and there are times when you will feel like you are going crazy from being snowed in. But if you have the right partner, it is worth it. And Yates Younger is good people. He helped us through a bad winter 2 years ago when Thomas was injured, brought us food, chopped wood, did not ask for anything in return. If he has chosen you, that means he sees something special in you. Do not be too quick to dismiss what he is offering." Olivia nodded, touched by the older woman's words. "Thank you, I appreciate that." Over the next week, Olivia settled into a routine at the cabin. Yates showed her his trap lines, teaching her how to check them and reset them. He took her hunting, and she discovered she was a decent shot with a rifle. They fished in the stream and picked wild berries, and Yates showed her which plants were edible and which were poisonous. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains, talking about everything and nothing. Yates told her about his plans for the cabin, additions he wanted to build if he had a family to house. Olivia told him about her dreams of having children someday, of teaching them to read and love books the way her mother had taught her. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Olivia fell in love. It was not a dramatic, sweeping feeling like in the novels she had read. It was quieter than that, sneaking up on her in small moments. The way Yates always made sure she had the warmest blanket at night. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. The way his whole face softened when he looked at her. The way he never tried to push her into anything, always giving her space to make her own choices. One evening, about 10 days into their stay at the cabin, Olivia made a decision. They were sitting on the porch as usual, and Yates was whittling a piece of wood, his large hands moving with surprising delicacy. Olivia watched him for a long moment, then took a deep breath. "Yates," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Always," he replied, not looking up from his whittling. "Why have you not kissed me yet?" That got his attention. His hand stilled, and he looked up at her with surprise. "Because I did not want to presume," he said carefully. "We agreed to take this slow, and I wanted to make sure you were comfortable." "I am comfortable," Olivia said. "Very comfortable. In fact, I am more than comfortable. I am happy, happier than I have been in a long time, and I would very much like you to kiss me." Yates set down his whittling and turned to face her fully. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because once I start, I am not sure I will want to stop." "I am sure," Olivia whispered. Yates stood up and crossed the porch in 2 long strides. He cupped her face in his large hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses and strength. "You are sure?" he asked again, giving her one last chance to back out. "Yes," Olivia breathed, and then his lips were on hers and the world fell away. He kissed her softly at first, tentatively, as if she were something precious and fragile. But when she responded, rising up on her toes and wrapping her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened. His arms came around her, pulling her close against his broad chest, and Olivia felt surrounded by warmth and strength and safety. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because of a poker game or because you need a place to live. Marry me because you want to. Because you feel what I feel." "And what do you feel?" Olivia asked, even though she thought she knew. "I love you," Yates said simply. I know it has only been a couple of weeks, but I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your courage. I love the way you laugh and the way you are not afraid to challenge me. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "I love you too," she said. I did not expect to. I thought I would just be testing the waters, seeing if I could tolerate this life, but I do not just tolerate it, I love it. I love the mountains and the peace and the beauty, and most of all, I love you." Yates kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, just joy and passion and the promise of a future together. "Is that a yes then?" he asked when they finally came up for air. "You will marry me?" "Yes," Olivia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Yates let out a whoop of joy and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around on the porch. Olivia laughed, holding on to his broad shoulders, feeling lighter than she had in years. When he finally set her down, they were both grinning like fools. "We should probably do this properly," Yates said. "Ride down to one of the towns, find a preacher, or we could ask the Callaways if they know of anyone who could marry us up here," Olivia suggested. "I do not need a fancy wedding, I just need you." "Are you sure?" Yates asked. "Most women want a proper ceremonies, a nice dress, all of that. I am not most women," Olivia said. "And besides, I would rather start our life together now than wait weeks to ride down to a town and back." Yates pulled her close again, kissing the top of her head. "Have I mentioned that I love you?" "Once or twice," Olivia said, smiling against his chest. "But I do not mind hearing it again." They rode over to the Callaways the next morning to share their news. Emma squealed with delight and immediately started planning. As it turned out, Thomas had a brother who was a circuit preacher, currently making his rounds through the mountain settlements. If they were lucky, he would be passing through in the next few days. "I will send word to him," Thomas said, "and we can have the wedding here if you like. Give me a few days to spread the word to the other families. They will all want to be here for it." And so 4 days later, Olivia found herself standing in the Callaways' cabin, wearing her best dress with a crown of wildflowers in her hair that Emma and the children had made for her. The cabin was packed with people, all the families from the surrounding area crowding in to witness the ceremony. Yates stood at the front of the room, looking nervous and proud in clean clothes with his hair neatly tied back. When Olivia walked toward him, his face lit up with such pure love that she felt her eyes sting with happy tears. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Thomas's brother, Reverend Michael Calloway, spoke about love and commitment and the importance of partnership. When it came time for the vows, Yates held both of Olivia's hands in his and spoke clearly. "I, Yates Younger, take you, Olivia Warren, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, protect you, respect you, and stand by your side for the rest of my days. You are my partner, my equal, and the best thing that has ever happened to me." Olivia had to blink back tears as she repeated her own vows. "I, Olivia Warren, take you, Yates Younger, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, support you, challenge you when you need it, and stand by your side no matter what comes. You gave me back my choice when I had none, and I choose you, now and always." When Reverend Calloway pronounced them husband and wife, Yates did not wait for permission. He swept Olivia into his arms and kissed her soundly, to the cheers and applause of everyone in the cabin. The celebration that followed was lively and joyful. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was dancing and singing. Emma and the other women had prepared a feast, and Olivia was overwhelmed by the warmth and welcome of this small mountain community. These people barely knew her, but they had opened their arms and hearts to her because she was marrying one of their own. As the sun was setting, Yates pulled Olivia aside. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. "Yes," Olivia said. "Very ready." They said their goodbyes and rode back to the cabin under a sky full of stars. When they arrived, Yates lifted Olivia down from her horse and carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing. That night, as they lay together in the bed that was now theirs to share, Olivia marveled at how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had gone from being a woman with no choices to a wife with a husband who loved and respected her. She had gone from the confines of a small desert town to the wild beauty of the mountains. She had gone from loneliness to belonging. "What are you thinking?" Yates asked, running his fingers through her hair. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest woman alive," Olivia said, "and that I am so glad your uncle was a terrible poker player." Yates laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "I am glad too, although I still think I was the one who won the real prize that night." "We both won," Olivia said, tilting her face up to kiss him. "That is the best part." Their first year of marriage was an adventure in learning each other. Winter came early to the mountains, and Olivia discovered that Emma had not been exaggerating about how hard it could be. There were weeks when they were snowed in, unable to even leave the cabin. But Yates had prepared well, and they had plenty of supplies. They spent those long winter nights reading aloud to each other, playing cards, and talking about their dreams for the future. Yates was teaching Olivia to trap and hunt, and she was proving to be an apt student. She had a good eye and steady hands. and she was not squeamish about the realities of mountain life. In turn, Olivia taught Yates to appreciate the small comforts she brought to the cabin. She sewed curtains for the windows, embroidered pillows for the furniture, and cooked meals that were more elaborate than the simple fare Yates had been living on for years. But more than the practical skills they shared, they were building a partnership based on trust and respect. When they disagreed, which was inevitable, they talked it through until they found a solution they could both live with. When one of them was struggling, the other stepped up to provide support. They were learning to be a team, and Olivia loved every moment of it. In the spring, they made the journey back to Oatman so Olivia could settle her affairs permanently. The trip was bittersweet. Olivia collected her remaining possessions and said goodbye to the few friends she still had in town. They sold her house to a young couple just starting out, and Olivia was glad to know it would be filled with love and laughter. She tried to see her uncle one more time, but Marcus refused to meet with her. The bartender at Sullivan's saloon told her that Marcus had become bitter and angry, blaming everyone but himself for his losses. Olivia felt a pang of sadness, but she had learned to let go of things she could not control. She had her own life now, her own family, and that had to be her priority. When they returned to the mountains, Olivia felt like she was finally coming home. The cabin in the valley was where she belonged. With Yates by her side, summer brought more opportunities to visit with their neighbors. They attended a barn raising for a new family that had moved into the area, and Olivia found herself welcomed as part of the community. The women were curious about her life before the mountains, and she shared stories of Oatman and the desert, while they taught her their tricks for preserving food and making do with limited resources. One evening in late summer, as they sat on their porch watching the stars come out, Olivia shared some news that she had been holding close for a few weeks. "Yates," she said, taking his hand, "I am with child." For a moment Yates just stared at her, as if he had not quite processed the words. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming him. "Really?" he asked. "We are going to have a baby?" "Yes," Olivia said, laughing at his expression. "We are going to be parents." Yates pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "This is the best news I have ever gotten," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am going to be a father, and I am going to be a mother," Olivia said. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Yates admitted, "but also excited." "We are going to be good at this, Olivia." "I know we are. I know we are too," she agreed. They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about what they would need to prepare for the baby, how they would adjust their lives. Yates was determined to add another room onto the cabin before winter, to give their growing family more space. Olivia was already mentally cataloging what supplies they would need, what baby clothes she could sew. The pregnancy was not easy. Olivia struggled with sickness in the early months, and as she grew larger, she found the physical demands of mountain life more challenging. But Yates was endlessly patient and supportive, taking over more of the heavy work and making sure she rested when she needed to. Emma Calloway became a regular visitor, checking on Olivia and offering advice based on her own experiences with pregnancy and childbirth. Their daughter was born on a cold February morning, with Emma acting as midwife and Yates pacing anxiously outside the cabin. When Emma finally called him in to meet his daughter, Yates approached the bed with awe in his eyes. "She is perfect," he whispered, carefully taking the tiny bundle from Olivia. "She looks just like you." "She has your eyes," Olivia said softly, exhausted but happy. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names endlessly over the months, never quite settling on one they both loved. But looking at their daughter's tiny face, Yates said, "Hope. Let us name her Hope. Because she is our hope for the future, the best thing we have ever created together." "Hope Younger," Olivia said, testing out the name. "I love it. It is perfect." Life with a baby was exhausting and wonderful all at once. Hope was a healthy, happy child who seemed to thrive in the mountain air. Yates was a devoted father, spending hours just holding his daughter and marveling at her tiny fingers and toes. He sang to her in his deep, rumbling voice, and Hope would fall asleep on his broad chest, utterly content. As Hope grew from a baby into a toddler, Olivia marveled at how much joy she brought into their lives. She had her father's fearlessness and her mother's curiosity, and she loved exploring the woods around the cabin. Yates made sure she understood the dangers of the wilderness, but he also encouraged her adventurous spirit. When Hope was 2 years old, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their son was born in early autumn, during the golden season when the aspens turned the mountainsides into rivers of gold. They named him Yates Younger, partly because Olivia loved the poetry of the name, and partly because from the moment he was born, he seemed to be looking toward the horizon, curious about everything beyond his immediate view. With 2 children, the cabin felt fuller and busier. Yates finished building the addition he had started before Hope was born, giving them more space for their growing family. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm of work and play, of seasons changing and children growing. Years passed in a blur of happy moments. Hope learned to ride almost as soon as she could walk, and Yonder was never far behind his sister. They helped with the traps and the hunting, with the gardening and the endless chores that came with mountain living. Yates taught them to respect the land and the animals, to take only what they needed and give thanks for what they received. Olivia taught them to read and write, to love books and stories, to think critically about the world around them. The community of mountain families grew over the years, and regular gatherings became a cherished tradition. The children played together while the adults shared news and helped each other with major projects. It was a good life, a hard life sometimes, but a good one. When Hope was 10 and Yonder was 8, Olivia found herself pregnant for a 3rd time. This pregnancy was unexpected, and at first Olivia worried. She was 34 now, not as young as she had been with her first 2 children. But the pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in the spring they welcomed a 2nd daughter. They named her Grace, because she was a grace note in their lives, an unexpected gift that made their family complete. On Grace's 1st birthday, the whole community gathered at the Younger cabin for a celebration. It was a warm summer evening, and the adults sat on the porch while the children ran wild in the meadow beyond. Olivia sat with Yates, Grace sleeping contentedly in her arms, and watched Hope and Yonder play with the other children. "Can you believe it has been 11 years since that poker game?" Olivia asked quietly. Yates put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Best hand I ever won," he said. "Even if I did not really win. You chose me, remember?" "I did," Olivia agreed, "and I would choose you again every single day." "I love you," Yates said, kissing the top of her head. "More now than I did then, if that is even possible." "I love you too," Olivia replied. "Thank you for giving me the choice, for respecting me enough to let me decide my own future." "You gave me a future," Yates said. "A family, a home, a reason to wake up excited about each day. I am the one who should be thanking you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Emma came over and took Grace from Olivia's arms, insisting that the new parents needed a moment to themselves. Yates pulled Olivia to her feet and led her out into the meadow, away from the crowd. "Dance with me," he said, and even though there was no music, Olivia stepped into his arms. They swayed together in the fading light, and Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate gamble in a smoky saloon to this moment surrounded by love and family and community. "Do you ever regret it?" Yates asked. "Giving up town life, choosing this harder path?" "Never," Olivia said firmly. "This is where I belong, with you, with our children, in these mountains. This is my home, mine too," Yates said. "You are my home, Olivia. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, they walked back to the cabin hand in hand. Their children ran to greet them, Hope and Yonder chattering about their games, and Yates scooped them both up in his strong arms, making them shriek with laughter. Olivia watched her family with a heart full of gratitude. She thought about the woman she had been 11 years ago, scared and alone, watching her uncle throw away everything they had. That woman could never have imagined this life, this happiness, this abundance of love, but Yates had seen something in her that night, had taken a chance on a losing hand because he believed in the possibility of something more. And she had taken a chance on him, trusting a stranger who offered her respect when everyone else saw her as property. They had built this life together, one choice at a time, one day at a time, and it was more beautiful than anything Olivia could have dreamed. As the celebration continued around them, as their friends and neighbors filled their home with laughter and music, Olivia looked at Yates and smiled. He smiled back, that same expression that had captured her heart in the very beginning, full of love and promise and absolute certainty. "To us," she said softly, raising an imaginary glass. "To us," Yates agreed, "and to all the years ahead." They had been given a chance, both of them in that smoke-filled room so many years ago. A chance to choose, to change, to build something real and lasting. And they had taken that chance and turned it into a lifetime of love. The mountains rose around them, strong and eternal, and in the valley between the peaks, the Younger family had found their place in the world. Not because of fate or luck or a hand of cards, but because two people had chosen each other and chosen to keep choosing each other every day after that. And that, Olivia thought as Yates pulled her close and kissed her under the stars, was the greatest prize of all. Not winning or losing, but choosing and being chosen in return. Not a hand of cards, but two hearts joined together, building a life that was worth more than any pot of gold. The years continued to unfold with a gentle rhythm that Olivia had come to cherish. Their children grew strong and capable, each developing their own unique personalities. Hope became a skilled tracker and hunter, often accompanying her father on his longer expeditions into the high country. Yonder had inherited his mother's love of books and spent hours reading everything he could get his hands on, though he was equally at home in the wilderness. And Grace, still young but full of spirit, seemed to be a perfect blend of her siblings, equally comfortable with a rifle or a storybook. The mountain community continued to grow, and the Youngers became pillars of their small settlement. Yates used his knowledge to help newcomers learn the skills they needed to survive, and Olivia organized a small school where the children could learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. It met in different homes throughout the season, and Olivia took pride in seeing these mountain children develop a love of learning. When Hope turned 16, a young man from one of the neighboring families began courting her. Olivia watched her daughter navigate this new territory with amusement and a touch of melancholy. Where had the time gone? It seemed like only yesterday that Hope had been a tiny bundle in her arms, and now she was becoming a woman in her own right. "You are thinking too hard," Yates said one evening, coming up behind Olivia as she stood on the porch watching Hope and her young man walk along the stream. "I am thinking about how fast it all goes," Olivia said, leaning back against his solid warmth. "She is going to get married someday, probably sooner rather than later. And then Yonder will be grown, and Grace and we will be the old folks sitting on the porch watching our grandchildren play." "That does not sound so bad to me," Yates said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I am looking forward to being an old man with you. We can sit on this porch and tell stories about the old days, and our grandchildren will think we are making half of it up." Olivia laughed. "Do you ever think about how we met? About how unlikely all of this was, all the time," Yates admitted. "I think about how close I came to not taking that chance, to just folding my hand and walking away. What would my life be now if I had done that? Probably still alone in these mountains, wondering if I would ever find someone to share it all with. And I would probably still be an oatman, taking care of my uncle, slowly losing myself." Olivia said quietly. "You saved me that night, Yates. You gave me a way out when I did not have one." "We saved each other," Yates corrected. "You think I was doing fine before you came along, but I was not. I was lonely and did not even want to admit it to myself. You brought light into my life, Olivia. You and our children, this whole life we have built. I was just existing before. Now I am living." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the peaks they had called home for so many years. The mountains had witnessed their love story, from those first uncertain days to this moment of perfect contentment. Hope married her young man 2 years later, in a ceremony that was much larger than Olivia and Yates's own wedding had been. The whole community turned out, and Olivia cried happy tears as she watched her daughter pledge her life to someone who clearly adored her. Yates walked Hope down the aisle with obvious pride, though Olivia saw him discreetly wipe his own eyes more than once. The young couple built a cabin a few miles away, close enough for regular visits, but far enough to establish their own household. A year later, Olivia and Yates became grandparents for the first time when Hope gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Holding her grandson for the first time, Olivia was overwhelmed by the continuity of it all. The way love and life passed from one generation to the next. Yonder, true to his name, eventually decided he wanted to see more of the world. At 19, he announced his intention to travel east, to see the cities and perhaps get more formal education. Olivia's heart broke a little at the thought of him leaving, but she and Yates had always encouraged their children to follow their own paths. "I will come back," Yonder promised as he prepared to leave. "This is my home. I just need to see what else is out there first." "I understand," Olivia said, hugging him tightly. "Your father left home to find his way too. Just promise me you will write, and you will come back when you are ready." "I promise," Yonder said. True to his word, letters began arriving regularly, full of Yonder's adventures and observations. He spent time in Denver, then Kansas City, then made his way all the way to St. Louis. His letters were full of wonder at the things he saw, but also frequent references to missing the mountains and his family. After 3 years he returned, bringing with him a young woman he had met in Denver. She was a teacher, and within months of arriving in the mountains, she and Yonder were married. She fit seamlessly into the community, and soon she and Olivia were working together to expand the mountain school. Grace, their youngest, turned out to be the one who would stay closest to home. She married a young man from the settlement and built her cabin less than a mile from her parents. She gave Olivia and Yates 4 grandchildren in quick succession, and the Younger cabin was constantly filled with the sound of children's laughter. As the years passed and Olivia and Yates moved into their 50s, they gradually stepped back from the more physically demanding aspects of mountain life. Yates still checked his trap lines, but not as extensively as he once had. Olivia still taught, but she shared the responsibility with Younger's wife and other members of the community. They had earned their rest, and they took pleasure in watching their children and grandchildren thrive. One evening, as they sat on their porch in the spot that had become their favorite place in all the world, Yates took Olivia's hand. "Do you remember what you said to me the night I won that poker game?" he asked. Olivia thought back, trying to recall her exact words. "I said a lot of things that night. Which part do you mean?" "You said, 'I am not a piece of property to be gambled away,'" Yates recalled. "You were so fierce, so determined to stand up for yourself even though you were scared. That was when I knew for certain I was making the right choice." "I was terrified," Olivia admitted. "My whole world was falling apart, and I did not know if I could trust you. But you proved yourself worthy of that trust every single day since then. We built a good life," Yates said, looking out at the mountains that had been the backdrop of their love story. "A really good life. The best life," Olivia agreed. They had been married for nearly 30 years now, and Olivia loved Yates more with each passing day. His hair was more gray than dark now, and his beard was shot through with silver. There were lines around his eyes and weathering on his face from decades of mountain living. But he was still the strongest, most capable man she had ever known, and when he looked at her, she still felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. "Do you ever wonder what your uncle would think if he could see you now?" Yates asked. Olivia considered the question. She rarely thought about Marcus these days. She had heard through occasional visitors that he had died a few years after she left Oatman, alone and bitter, his liver finally giving out from too much whiskey. She had felt sadness at the news, but it was distant, like hearing about a stranger. "I think he would be shocked," she finally said. "He saw me as a burden, someone who was there to take care of him. He never imagined I could have a life like this, with a man who loves and respects me, with children and grandchildren, with a community that values me. In his mind, I was never going to be more than a spinster keeping his house. The idea that I could be happy, truly happy, probably never occurred to him." "His loss," Yates said firmly. "He had the chance to have a real family, to appreciate what you offered, and he threw it away for cards and whiskey. I am grateful for his stupidity, though. If he had been a better man, you might never have been desperate enough to give me a chance." "I do not think it was desperation," Olivia said thoughtfully. "Or not just desperation anyway. When you offered me a choice, when you made it clear that my voice mattered, something shifted in me. I realized that I deserved better than what I had been settling for. And when I looked at you, I saw someone who understood that. Someone who would be a partner, not just a provider. That was what made me say yes. Best decision either of us ever made," Yates said, pulling her close. As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, they heard the sound of their grandchildren playing in the meadow below the cabin. Grace's oldest was teaching the younger ones to catch fireflies, their laughter floating up on the evening breeze. It was a sound that never got old, the sound of family and joy and life continuing. "We should probably head inside," Olivia said reluctantly. "It is getting cold." "5 more minutes," Yates said, and Olivia smiled, settling more comfortably against him. 5 more minutes inevitably turned into 15 or 20, as they were both reluctant to leave the peace of the moment. When they finally did go inside, the cabin was warm from the fire Yates had built earlier. Olivia moved around the familiar space, banking the fire for the night, checking that everything was secure. Yates watched her from the doorway, and when she turned to ask what he was thinking, she saw such love in his expression that it took her breath away. "What?" she asked, smiling. "Just admiring my wife," Yates said, "thinking about how lucky I am." "We are both lucky," Olivia said, crossing to him and slipping her arms around his waist. "We took a chance on each other, and it paid off in ways neither of us could have imagined." That night, as they lay together in the bed they had shared for so many years, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a back room in a saloon to this cabin in the mountains. From strangers thrown together by circumstance to partners who knew each other's hearts completely. It had not always been easy. There had been hard winters and lean times, illnesses and injuries, moments when the isolation of mountain life felt overwhelming. But through it all they had each other, and that had been enough. The seasons continued their eternal cycle, and the Younger family continued to grow and flourish. More grandchildren arrived, and Olivia and Yates became the respected elders of their community. The couple that everyone looked to as an example of what a strong marriage could be. When Yates turned 60, the community threw him a celebration. Olivia watched her husband, still strong and vital despite his years, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends, and she felt overwhelming gratitude for this life they had built together. Speech. Someone called out and the crowd took up the chant. Yates looked embarrassed but stood up, raising his hand for quiet. "I am not much for speeches," he said, his deep voice carrying across the crowd, "but I will say this. 30 years ago, I walked into a saloon in Oatman and sat down at a poker table. I thought I was just there to play cards and maybe win some money. But I walked out with something far more valuable. I walked out with the right to ask the most remarkable woman I have ever met if she would take a chance on me." He looked directly at Olivia, and she felt tears spring to her eyes. She said yes, even though she had every reason to say no. And that yes changed my life. Everything good in my life, everything worth having comes from that decision. My children, my grandchildren, this community, this life. All of it stems from the moment Olivia Warren decided I was worth the risk. He raised his glass. "So here is to taking chances. Here is to the courage to choose your own path. And here is to the woman who chose me when she did not have to." "I love you, Olivia Younger. I love you too," Olivia called out, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and it was just the two of them again, Yates and Olivia walked out to their favorite spot on the porch. The mountains were silver in the moonlight, beautiful and eternal. "That was a beautiful speech," Olivia said. "I meant every word," Yates replied. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me," Olivia said. "You gave me back my life that night. You gave me choice and freedom and respect, and then you gave me love, real, lasting, deep love. I could not have asked for anything more." They stood together in the moonlight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. The mountain wind whispered through the pines, and somewhere in the distance an owl hooted. It was the sound of home, the sound of peace, the sound of a life well lived. Years continued to pass, and eventually, Olivia and Yates became great-grandparents. Their family had spread throughout the mountains, each generation carrying forward the values of hard work, respect, and love that Olivia and Yates had instilled in their children. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the original cabin. It took 3 days for everyone to arrive, families coming from different parts of the mountains, and even a few from the towns below. The celebration lasted a full week, with multiple generations of Youngers filling the valley with life and laughter. On the actual anniversary, as the sun was setting, all the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren gathered around Olivia and Yates. Hope, now a grandmother herself, stood up to speak. 40 years ago, our parents met under unusual circumstances," she began, and there was knowing laughter from the crowd. The story of the poker game had become family legend, told and retold with embellishments over the years. But from that unlikely beginning, they built something extraordinary. They built a love that has lasted through 4 decades and counting. They built a family that now spans 4 generations. They built a community that is stronger because they are part of it. And they taught all of us what real partnership looks like. She turned to her parents. "Thank you for showing us how to love, how to commit, how to work through hard times and celebrate good times. Thank you for building this family and giving us all this legacy. We love you both so much." There was not a dry eye in the crowd, including Olivia's. Yates pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, looking out at the family they had created. All these people, all this love, all from a single choice made in a moment of crisis. "Did you ever imagine this?" she whispered to Yates. "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "I hoped for a partner, maybe a child or two. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." As the celebration continued around them, Olivia reflected on the journey of their lives together. There had been sorrows along the way. They had lost friends to accidents and illness, had weathered economic hardships and natural disasters. But through it all, they had each other. And that partnership, that deep abiding love and respect, had carried them through everything. The poker game in Oatman felt like it had happened in another lifetime. To different people, in some ways it had. The scared young woman and the lonely mountain man who had met that night had been transformed by love into partners, parents, grandparents, pillars of a community. They had grown together, changed together, built a life together that neither could have created alone. As Olivia and Yates grew older, they spent more and more time on that beloved porch, watching the mountains and talking about their lives. They had slowed down considerably, content to let the younger generations handle the physical demands of mountain living. But their minds were as sharp as ever, and they took pleasure in passing on their accumulated wisdom to anyone who would listen. One crisp autumn morning, when Olivia was in her late 60s, She woke to find Yates watching her with an expression of such tender love that it made her heart skip. "What?" she asked, reaching up to touch his bearded face. "Just memorizing this moment," Yates said softly. "You here in the morning light. I want to remember every detail." "We have thousands of mornings ahead of us," Olivia said. "I hope so," Yates replied, "but that does not mean I do not want to appreciate each one." It was a reminder that time was precious, that nothing lasted forever except the love they had built together. They made the most of each day, walking slowly through the woods they had explored together for decades, sitting by the stream where their children and grandchildren had learned to fish, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that never got old. When Olivia turned 70, she felt the weight of her years more than she ever had before. Her joints ached, her movements were slower, and she tired more easily. But Yates was always there, patient and supportive, just as she had been for him when his own body began to show the signs of age. They took care of each other, these two people who had started as strangers and become essential to each other's existence. When one had a difficult day, the other was there with comfort and encouragement. When one felt discouraged, the other provided hope. They were a team, weathering the challenges of aging the same way they had weathered everything else together. One evening, as they sat on their porch wrapped in blankets against the cooling air, Yates turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "If I go first," he said quietly, "I need you to promise me you will be all right, that you will lean on the family, let them take care of you." "Do not talk like that," Olivia said, though she knew it was a conversation they needed to have. "We have to talk about it," Yates said gently. "We are not young anymore, and I need to know you will be taken care of." "Only if you promise the same," Olivia countered. "If I go first, you have to promise you will not retreat into the mountains alone. You will stay here with the family, let them support you." "I promise," Yates said, "though the thought of being in this world without you is almost unbearable." "Then we will just have to stay together as long as possible," Olivia said firmly. "I am not ready to let you go yet, Yates Younger. We still have adventures ahead of us." And they did. They lived to see their great-grandchildren grow into young adults, to witness more weddings and welcome more babies into the family. They celebrated 50 years of marriage, surrounded by the largest gathering the mountain settlement had ever seen. They grew old together with grace and dignity, never losing the essential connection that had drawn them together in the first place. When Olivia was 76 and Yates was 78, they spent a perfect summer day surrounded by family. There was a picnic, games, and laughter. As the sun began to set, Yates and Olivia retreated to their porch, watching the familiar mountains turn pink and gold. "This is what heaven must be like," Olivia said contentedly. "If heaven is anywhere near this good, I will be satisfied," Yates agreed. That night they went to bed holding hands just as they had done for over 50 years. They fell asleep facing each other, and in the morning Grace found them that way, peaceful and together, even in death. They had passed within hours of each other, neither willing to be in this world without the other. The entire mountain community mourned the loss of two of its founding members. But the grief was tempered by the recognition that Olivia and Yates had lived full, rich lives, and had left behind a legacy that would endure for generations. They were buried side by side on a hillside overlooking the valley they had called home, with a simple marker that read, "Yates and Olivia Younger, partners in life and death." They chose each other, and in doing so built a family and a community. Their love endures. In the years after their deaths, their descendants continued to share the story of how Olivia and Yates had met, of the poker game that brought them together, and the choice that changed everything. It became a family legend passed down with pride, a reminder that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that the courage to choose wisely can create miracles. Hope, the eldest child, lived to be 92 and never tired of telling her grandchildren about her parents. "They taught us that respect and partnership are the foundation of real love," she would say. "My father won the right to ask, but he gave my mother the power to choose, and she chose him every single day for the rest of her life. That is what real love looks like." The cabin in the valley remained in the family, passed down through generations, carefully maintained and cherished. The porch where Olivia and Yates had spent so many evenings became a pilgrimage site for their descendants, a place to feel close to the couple who had started it all. And in the quiet moments when the wind whispered through the pines and the mountains stood eternal against the sky, it was easy to imagine that Olivia and Yates were still there, still sitting side by side, still choosing each other over and over again. Their love had transcended death, living on in the family they had created, in the community they had helped build, and in the mountains that had witnessed their beautiful journey from strangers to soulmates. It had all started with a poker game, with a desperate bet and an honorable response. But it had become so much more than that. It had become a love story for the ages, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the courage to take a chance and the wisdom to choose well. Yates had bet his heart on a losing card, won the pot, and handed Olivia the choice, and she had chosen love, partnership, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. Together they had proved that real love was not about winning or losing, but about choosing to build something beautiful together, one day at a time, for a lifetime.